Hey guys, my name is Ramsey and I run the Marsathon YouTube channel. I really want to talk about a fun series that I got into. The reason I got into it was because some guys did the Marsathon. This is a series called the Barsoom series, which is 11, perhaps 12 books. The way they've got a list on Goodreads is you've got 11A and 11B. I don't know if it's two separate books or not. But this is the first five that I've got here. John Carter of Mars. The first one is Princess of Mars, second one's God of Mars, and the third one is Warlord of Mars, and I've read those three so far. And what I've got left is Thuvia of Mars and the Chessmen of Mars in this one, and I'll have to find the other books somewhere else. Most of them are available on YouTube as an audiobook for 8 to 5 hours a piece. So for an audiobook, that's actually relatively short, and usually you can get through them pretty quickly. I listen to audiobooks at 1.5 speed, which I'll put a link down below for the first one, Princess of Mars, which they let you speed it up. Not all YouTube videos let you speed it up, but this one you can speed up to 2 times, and it's called Audiobooks Unleashed. So John Carter was a Civil War cavalryman. I can't remember if he was a captain or a sergeant. It doesn't play a lot into the story other than the fact that he's from Virginia. That's a big part of the story. And then he was respectful to his men in the Civil War. He kind of brings that back. Imagine John Carter as like the guy that will tell you like how great he is, but try to be humble about it at the same time. That's kind of who John Carter is. Like, a man like me would never do such a thing because I'm a humble Virginian. Kind of that's the kind of story. But it's endearing. He always tries to do the right thing. He treats the Princess of Mars very, very well, and eventually he does marry her. Not a big spoiler there. It's a romance. They end up getting married. And there's enough action in it that it's enjoyable. There's enough romance in it that I think both sides of the table, people that like romance, people that don't, will enjoy it. And I think that they would really, most people would like it. And they're easy to get through, they're fast-paced, they're fun. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Princess of Mars, which is the first one, and then I'll kind of tell you a little bit more about a couple of the later books. I think initially these were printed as pulps for the pulp magazines back in like 1910, 1912, in that like time period, right around the turn of the century. And because they serialize them, they work really well as chapters. You have a beginning and end of a moment, but it always leads you to want to read more into the book. Princess of Mars, John Carter is basically duplicated, and his duplicate is sent to Barsoom, which is Mars. Because of the lower gravity, our bodies are stronger than the people that are on Mars. When we come in Princess of Mars, we have the red Martians and we have the green Martians. The green Martians are called Tharks. They had to come out of the seas, and all the water has dried up, so they were originally sea creatures, and then they climbed out of the seas. They have 2 legs, 4 arms. They're 8 feet tall, pretty strong, have tusks that come out, are very clan-like, very the strength of your sword determines who you are. So John Carter is able to jump 40 feet in the air because his muscles are more attuned to that gravity, and he can punch somebody to death. So he gets in some fights early on and earns a place as a warlord in the Thark culture. From what I have imagined on like the red Martians, they're like the color of blood. Not like you'd see the skin of Native Americans, where it's kind of just a red tint to it a little bit. But it's like really, really, really red, like bright red. And so I think he saw her and he's like, oh man, she looks a lot like me. Supposedly she's the most beautiful woman in the world. She has no flaws. Her proportions are perfect. That kind of thing. I mean, she's going to be the perfect woman, right? And then there's a lot of family drama through the Tharks. My favorite character isn't actually John Carter. It's Tars Tarkas. Tars Tarkas is a Thark. He is second or third in command in the group, but he's the first one to meet John Carter. He actually looks at John Carter, instead of just trying to kill him, he wants to try to see what he's all about. And it was really, really interesting to see like how Tars Tarkas changed from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. I loved it personally. I think Tars Tarkas, as we continue on in the series, is just every time he's on the page, I'm excited to see Tars Tarkas. I think he's one of the coolest characters in the whole series. And as you get later in the books, you meet the other races of Martians on the planet. You have yellow Martians who live way up in the top. All of them have big, burly black beards, and they live up in the North Pole in like a special area that they can live in. And then you've got the white Martians who live over in the Valley of Dor, and then you have the black Martians, which are down in the Sea of Issus. And there's a lot of mythological lore established with the white Martians and the black Martians, but you've also got the white apes, which are big six-armed burly white apes. You've got these lion like creatures that have multiple legs, and they're huge and giant and tear people to pieces. Big giant horse-like creatures, but they're, you know, 5 times the size. You know, elephants, but horse-like elephants, I guess. There's so many cool creatures. He thought this out pretty well. Just designing the different species and races of the creatures. There's the plant men, which are, you know, come in the second book, and you're like, man, these things are weird. And it's just really fun to see all the, like, what he imagined Mars to be like, what he thought, you know, if Mars had people, what it would be. And it's so much fun. I'd give book 1 a chance if you guys are like, man, I'd love to try some turn of the century classic sci-fi. And I understand if some people don't want to read it because it was written back in the turn of the century, that, you know, there are just assumptions that are made by characters because they just don't assume that a woman could take care of herself or something like that. That you kind of just have to understand that that's not something that if we wrote John Carter of Mars now, that would be in it. And I don't think in any way it was very sexist. It was just the way things were thought of back then. Sorry, they're running and stomping upstairs. So I hope that you guys give it a shot. Princess of Mars was a fun book. It was definitely the longest out of the ones that I've read so far, but it sets up the story very well. You learn who John Carter is. You learn who Dejah Thoris is. You learn who Tarj Tarkas is, and you kind of get to know the world a little bit. It's definitely up there with stuff like Ray Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles, which was written close to that time period. And it's a fun pulp story. You know, War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, kind of that type of sci-fi classic. We have no idea what really space is like, but we're wanting to imagine it. And it's fun to see where they thought things would be, what they thought could happen. And I really enjoy it. It's almost like sword and sorcery on Mars. And I think if you guys want to try it, it'd be a lot of fun for a lot of people to try. I talked about these books on my Discord a little bit, and it was fun just to see the way that you know, these guys were going on about it. If you'd like to join the Discord and kind of talk about what you're reading and what I'm reading, and kind of have a conversation there, I'd love. That's a link down in the description. You can follow right away. And you know, I do Goodreads, Twitter. I'd love to talk to you guys about anything. And I appreciate you guys watching this video. Talk to you next time. Bye.